Now we're on example C. We had 2m squared equals 8m minus 3. So we have to make this equal to 0. So we will subtract 8m and add 3 to both sides. So we have 2m squared minus 8m plus 3 equals 0. Okay, now we can use the quadratic formula again. We got x is equal to the opposite. We know our b is negative 8 plus or minus square root of b is negative 8 squared minus 4. Our a is 2 and our c is 3. All over 2 times and a is 2. So we have x is equal to 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 4 times 2 is a minus 8 times 3 is a minus 24. And that's all over 4. So we have x is equal to 8 plus or minus the square root of 40 all over 4. Now we know the highest perfect square in 40 is 4. So we have x is equal to 8 plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 10 all over 4. So we have x is equal to 8 plus or minus 2 square root 10 all over 4. Now, we can separate this and solve. So it'll be 8 over 4 plus 2 square root 10 all over 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2, plus 2 can go on to 4 twice, so this will leave us the square root of 10 over 2. So it'd be plus or minus. And that is the final answer here. Now we go back to the next problem here. We have to do the same thing, but look here. We don't have an x value here, so what we could do is, why don't we isolate the x squared? So we could add 5 on both sides. We have 7x squared is equal to 8. Divide each side by 7. And x squared is equal to 8 over 7. Now we could take the square root of both sides. And then we will have x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 8 over 7. Now we know we cannot leave this as it is, because this is really this here. It's plus or minus the square root of 8 over the square root of 7. And we know we cannot have the square root of 7 in our denominator. So we need to multiply our numerator and denominator by the square root of 7. We want to rationalize our denominator. Now this will give us plus or minus the square root of 56 all over 7. And we know the square root of 56, the highest perfect square in 56 is 4. So this will give us plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 14 all over 7. The square root of 4 we know is 2. So it'd be square root 14 all over 7. So our final answer here is x is equal to plus or minus 2 square root of 14 over 7. Now, we scroll down here to the last problem, objective 3. It says solving problems using quadratic equations. A football is kicked straight up from a height of 4 feet with an initial speed of 60 feet per second. The formula h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 60t plus 4 describes the ball height above the ground, h, in feet, t seconds after it is kicked. How long will it take the ball to hit the ground? Use a calculator to round your result to the nearest tenth of a second. Okay, first of all, if the ball hits the ground, then how far above the ground is it? Okay, you're right. is 0. So we know our height is going to be 0. So what we have to do here is, with this formula, we will substitute in 0 for h and then solve for t. So we have 0 is equal to negative 16t squared plus 60t plus 4. Now what we need to do is this here. Why don't we move this over? Well, yeah, we could do this. Negative 16, 60, and 4, they all have 4 in common. So why don't we just factor out a negative 4 so we can make this 16 positive. So it'll be 4t squared minus 15t minus 1. Now we could divide each side by the negative 4. The equation we have left will be 4t squared minus 15t minus 1. And we can use the quadratic formula. We got x is equal to negative, b is negative 15, plus or minus the square root of, we had negative 15 squared, minus 4 times a is 4 and c is negative 1. And that is all over. It will be 2 times a, which is 4. So now we have x is equal to 15 plus or minus the square root of negative 15 squared is 225. A minus 4 times 4 is a minus 16 times a minus 1 is a positive 16. All over 2 times 4 is 8. So we have x is equal to 15 plus or minus the square root of 241 all over 8. Now, they want you to calculate this and round it to the nearest tenth of a second. So what we need to do is this here. We need to write this out as 15 plus the square root of 241 all over 8. And then also 15 minus the square root of 241 all over 8. Now, even without using a calculator, we know 15 or negative 15 squared is 225. So this square root of 241 is going to be larger than this 15. So this is going to be negative. So we could cross that out because we know our final answer cannot be negative. So now we could take a calculator, and I'll pull a calculator. Okay, now I have a calculator here. So what we would do here is, first, I don't have as sophisticated of a calculator as a lot of you have. But what I would do is this here. I believe with this calculator here, I would have to take 2 the square root of 241. And then I would have to add 15 to it. Now you all have the TI-83 or TI-84, so you won't run into this problem. And then divide that by 8. And my final answer, we're asked to round to the nearest tenth place. My final answer would be x is equal to 2.0. Now we have to look what the units are. The units are seconds. Okay, so we will put 2.0 seconds. Now, one thing I do have to change here is this here. The problem uses t. So when you write your final answer, you have to write t is equal to 2.0 seconds. Even though I know the quadratic formula uses x, we want to end this up with t. So it'll take 2.0 seconds, and that is it.